Hello and welcome another edition of the Corvive College Coaches Corner. And really every Thursday now has become what I feel is must-view information from all of the college coaches, all levels and divisions. Today we're going to be talking with a school, a university that we all see on television at various times, whether it's football season, occasionally a basketball game. But I, for one, would like to make the trek out to Hawaii. And we're going to be talking with Jordan Twohig, the assistant coach at the University of Hawaii. And Jordan, I want to say thank you first and foremost, taking the time to join me today.
Well, Coach, I appreciate you having me on. Like I said, I've been watching your show for a long time and listening to the podcast and learning myself. And like we spoke on in the past, I really appreciate what you do for parents, for players, for kids, for coaches. It's super educational. I'm just humbled to be on here.
Well, I'm very appreciative. Thank you for those kind words. But one of the things that I really love about you is your enthusiasm, your candidness. And I want to kind of start there. I mean, you've been around now. You've been around programs with really what I consider to be really great coaches at, Charleston Southern and Carl Kuhn, St. Mary's, and now under Billy in University of Hawaii. And I really want to kind of start there. You know, all of this experience has led up into what we now are at this new emerging world of college baseball. What is it like at the University of Hawaii with regard to portal, JUCO, high school? Let's start there. What does recruiting look like at the University of Hawaii?
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to talk about that. I think for us, it starts with our leader, right? Rich Hill is one of the true great coaches in college baseball. He's been doing it for such a long time at such a high level and had so many good coaches that have gotten a chance to coach under him and around him. So, we look at it in that respect. The University of Hawaii has got so many things to offer, but I think on the baseball development side, it starts with him, right? The culture that he has created in the last 4 years is a winning culture. Doing things the right way, attention to detail. And that's been, for even just in my short time there, noticing that right from the get-go. And so, when it comes to recruiting, you want to be in a place where you're going to have that opportunity to not only play, but be around good people and good men. And so it starts with there. And then I think it kind of carries down through the rest of our coaching staff. I mean, we've got an all-star coaching staff, and Dave Nakamo, who was at Stanford for years, went to the College World Series, was at the University of Washington with Lindsey Meggs, was a head coach himself at San Jose State, and has now been with Coach Hill for 4 years and has really kind of orchestrated that offense and really taken it to a new level, which has been fun to see. And then Keith Zuniga, who's one of the up-and-coming pitching coaches in the country, has done a lot of work with Team USA the last few years and really has built a name for himself on the recruiting side as well. And so, I'm coming into a situation where, I feel like fully supported on the recruiting side, the budget, being able to go see a lot of players, be able to bring players in to see Hawaii. But that's the coaching side and that's the player side to be able to get that. But in terms of what it offers, I mean, Hawaii is just a magical place. I mean, this is a place where people save thousands of dollars every year to try to vacation. You try to hope at some point to do a wedding there. So when we're recruiting to Hawaii, I think we've spoke on this. I can always get a phone call with a player. I think there's always that piques that interest, right? And I think the other things, it's the conversation from there that really keeps a player, a parent, somebody interested in the university. And I think the education piece is a big part of it. I mean, we're very blessed to have some amazing professors and some great majors, like 101 different majors at the University of Hawaii. So there's a huge sell on that front as well. But man, it's paradise. To get to play in paradise is a pretty special thing.
Yeah, I want to set the stage for two particular things. When I use the word hilly, that's my baseball vernacular.
No doubt.
And obviously, it's Rich Hill.
Yep.
So I want to start there. Obviously, for those that may remember this guy, his last name is Bryant, first name Chris. And, he played for Rich at the University of San Diego University. And, he's had a lot of great athletes in his head coaching career. And obviously, I always ask, tell us a little bit about the campus. But when I say that, when you think of Hawaii, you know what that's like. I mean, it's just a paradise. It's a beautiful, obviously a beautiful campus. So I want to kind of when you're talking to potential recruits,
Yes.
particularly at the high school level. I think many people from Hawaii refer to it as the mainland, but are they somewhat apprehensive due to maybe the logistics to go back and forth, maybe from a parent perspective or the cost perspective?
Sure.
Because your roster is literally filled with what, 10 to 14 different
Mhm.
states.
Yes.
So how do you kind of overcome that initial hurdle as far as, wow, that's a long way away from home?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the biggest thing that we try to do is bring Hawaii to the parents and to the players. And so, whether that's a Zoom call like this and some, videos, we have some great coverage. We've got a great media team that puts together some great stuff for us, video wise, so we can kind of bring that experience to the players and to the parents. And I think that helps a ton, because I think once you really try to dive in a little bit to Les Murakami Stadium and to the culture of what Hawaii baseball is, I mean, the fans and the community, it's tremendous. I mean, we average anywhere from 45 to 5,500 fans a game. And once they sell out in tickets, they don't stop selling tickets. So it's standing room only, a lot of games. And when you start thinking about, it's the only Division I school on the island, there's no pro team, right? And so culturally, when you think of baseball and like Little League baseball, Hawaii's always in the Little League World Series. So from the time those kids are youngsters all the way up, it's a baseball culture, and it's a baseball town. And so, whereas in other places you can go see a game on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and maybe see 3 different schools in one city, that's not the case. I mean, you're at the Les Friday, Saturday, and Sunday night. And so that experience alone, I think, brings a different element to the West Coast, right? And having grown up on the West Coast, coached for 20 years on the West Coast, there's some great crowds, but nothing like this. I mean, the only thing I can compare it to would be like an SEC type environment where you have, 5, 6, 7,000 people at a game screaming, and it's hard to hear yourself think. And I've had the luxury of coaching against the University of Hawaii and going there as an opponent and having to go through that. And great people, but boy, it gets loud, and it's a tough place to play. And so that makes it fun in itself. So being able to show a parent and a player some footage of that and kind of articulate that and be able to talk about that part of it, I think that's a huge sell. I think another part and the reason that we're able to do that is, just being able to articulate the fact that they're going to be leaving their kids with good men, right? That take it serious and have good values and are going to treat them, the way that they need to be treated, with respect and care, and really try to hone in on that player development side of things. And I think once we get to that point, they're going to know whether they can make that trip, being that far away from home, because it is for a lot of kids, it's a long flight.
Speaking on that topic, you and I had discussed, what I think is one of the most relevant up and coming changes with regard to college baseball, college athletics, I guess, but college baseball in particular. We are starting to see a real aggressive push with regard to the foreign student athlete.
Yeah.
Yesterday, day before, we saw a really big time Japanese right-handed pitcher now deciding to go to Penn State. We have Japanese athletes at Stanford. This is now, and we had talked about from an MLB perspective, you look at the brightest shiny object right now is the Dodgers, and arguably their 2 best players are from Japan. Do you think this is a trend, or do you think this is something that's coming to stay with regard to obviously your proximity, to China, Japan, the Far East? But do you think this is something that's really going to begin to kind of spin and get a little bit bigger as we go forward?
I do. I think it's more than a trend. I hope so. I've having experienced that myself now and having the opportunity to go over there with the team, and Coach Hill set up a great trip for us to go to Japan, to Tokyo this past fall. We got to play 2 of their best universities, Waseda University and Keio, coached by tremendous men. I mean, those kids played tremendously hard, and we got a chance to go out there and experience that on their home turf. And so to see the level of effort and detail that they put into the game, it was pretty awesome. And so I do think this is going to be something to where, recruiting and the opportunity to come over to the States is something that I think a lot of those kids want. They want that opportunity. Obviously, getting to see, what's happening with the Dodgers and Shohei and a lot of those players. I've even found, even the last 6 months, a lot of my DMs and a lot of emails and things that I've received. I'm getting a lot of international emails now. I think partly because there was some coverage on us going over to Tokyo. And I think there's, we have 2 players right now currently from international plays, like Tokyo being one of them. And we've had kids from Australia. We've got a kid from Canada right now. So international, I think, is something that is definitely going to stay and continue to go forward.
And on that point, let's talk a little bit about from the perspective of the high school athlete. I think a lot of times we get so consumed as parents, we start talking about portal and JUCOs, and it's unfair to the high school athlete. But in reality, college athletics really are about the highest level that a amateur athlete can play and before they potentially go into professional baseball. But this sport has always been and will continue to be, you have to be prepared to compete every single day. You just don't go and say, okay, I'm going to go to the University of Hawaii and coast for 4 or 5 years. You got to be ready to compete every single day, because competition is within your own 34-man roster, and it's coming from all over the world now. Talk a little bit about that need to really pay attention to detail with regard to the development at the younger ages.
Yeah, we talked about this, and I've had a chance to listen to a lot of your podcasts that talk a lot about this, is trying to bridge that gap. You're essentially, as a high school student, trying to bridge the gap between what you're going to be up against. And I always tell parents and kids this, like, it's not fair for those players. You don't know what you don't know. I mean, you do the very best you can with what you're up against. So if you're at a lower level of 4A or 3A school and you're the best on that team, the best in that league, you just don't quite know until you get to the college level what that's going to be like. And so that we've always had those adjustments, right? And now we throw the fact that you're dealing with 5th year, 6th year players that are 2-3 years older. The transfer portal allowing college coaches to build their rosters in such a way that it lends to an older team in terms of age. We're finding now that the high school player has to be pretty developed when he comes in order to make an impact right away. It doesn't always seem fair, but it's definitely the way it is. I mean, college coaches, we want the best for all of our kids, and we want to develop the best we possibly can, but we're limited in time, we're limited in hours. And so when I go out and I'm talking to people, or I'm looking at recruits, or that's one of the first things we talk about is the strength and conditioning piece, the nutrition piece. Are they actively providing themselves the opportunity to create good habits? Do they have good habits? What do they have any concept of what it is that they're putting into their bodies in terms of a nutrition aspect on a daily basis? I always ask a kid that. Do you know how many calories you're taking in every day? How much water are you drinking? What's your strength and conditioning plan? Are you lifting weights yet? I want to know those things. And it's not that those things can't be corrected. It's not that you can't administer those things. And again, having the luxury of talking with juniors on the phone and knowing that you're going to have 2 more years to recruit those kids, you like to try to help some of those guys that maybe have great talent that you've seen on the field, but you just look at them and know, man, I don't know if that body's going to hold up for a full season. Or
talk about that, because that's really what we're talking about.
Sure.
So like when you see, let's say you're looking at a junior, maybe even a senior in the fall of their senior year, you see 6'2", 171. It's not that the talent's not there. This
Correct.
is where the biggest disconnect is when parents hear from a coach, somebody like myself, and they say, well, you're going to have to really get in the weight. Well, he goes to the gym every day. Okay, well, it's the durability, because they don't know the workload. So talk a little bit about, from that dynamic, what you're referring to when you say, is this guy going to be able to hold up over a whole college season?
Yeah, when you think about high school athletes, a lot of times they say, well, I go all year long. I do travel baseball, or developmental organizational baseball, and I go through high school teams, and I go to a trainer. It's still different, right? What we ask our athletes to do 365 days out of the year, we kind of break it down into 4 seasons. I mean, you are training and lifting a certain way in the fall, and then we have fall practice, and you're training and lifting a certain way in the winter, training and lifting a certain way in the spring while we're playing. You're still doing that. There's no tapering off. I mean, we're just doing it a little different. And then you go into your summer phase where you're lifting and doing things a little bit different there. And so you're talking about 4 different seasons of not just playing, but training. And then you mix in the thing that we don't think about, which is the school side of it. Right. So now we're going and we're waking up for classes, and there's a lot of stress on those kids that they haven't necessarily felt. And we felt that more so in the last 4 to 5 years post COVID, where kids have had to do a lot of online stuff, and now they're having to be pushed back into classes, get to be back in classes, but that's different for them. So that adds a whole new set of, things that we're looking at. And so again, the reason I'm saying all this is because you put all of that into a pot and go, is that kid going to physically and mentally hold up when we're also putting a high level of stress on win and loss, on, pass, fail, get it done, don't get it done. And that's essentially what you're doing when you're out there on the baseball field, is you're trying to execute plays at a high level, and you're ultimately trying to score more runs than the other team. And if those particular players at that time aren't doing that consistently, that's hard. That's hard to not look at the 23-year-old who's doing it every single second, getting it done for us, and not go with that guy. And what does that mean? It means maybe that guy doesn't get the reps early on that he maybe, normally would in years past.
One of the things that I think frustrates a lot of families is they assume that there's this natural progression from high school / travel ball and into college. Now, you've coached under, over the last few years, what I call 2 precision-orientated college head coaches with Kyle Kuhn and Rich Hill. And one of the things that I try to get parents to understand is things like strike zone awareness, very different from high school or travel ball to college, particularly at the Division I level. The strike zone is like a postage stamp. You got to understand that the 2-0 heater probably isn't coming. You might see a slide piece or a changeup 2-0, particularly if there's men on base. How do you get families and athletes to really understand the margin of error at the collegiate level, particularly at the Division I and II levels? Man, it's razor thin, and you really have to be at your best, both physically as well as mentally.
Yeah, I think that you hit it right on the head, and I appreciate you commenting on both of those coaches, Rich Hill, Carl Kuhn. I got to coach with Mark McMillan at Charleston Southern as well, who I think is a tremendous coach, and even Lindsey Meggs when I was at Washington. And those were things that were such a high level, high focus, and I think it comes down to the reps. Is you have to be able to see it, and you have to be able to make good decisions. So if you're a hitter in that batter's box, it's such a different beast when it comes to facing a guy with 3 pitches for strikes. The difference between, swinging at a ball that's in the river or on the black and taking that pitch, or being okay taking that pitch because that's a pitcher's pitch. That's not your pitch. That's his pitch. And that's not what you were looking for. And so that doesn't go on as much at the high school levels. It's not that it doesn't. Some high-level high school coaches teach that type of approach, but you're not always facing that type of stuff. And so, again, back to my point of you only know what you know. If you're used to being super aggressive and swinging at a pitch, missing it, and having that pitcher throw the pitch again, because that's all the pitcher can do, that it really humbles players at this level early on. And I think it's the ones that could be mentally strong and bounce back from failure and do that constantly that start to build up the callus, I guess you would say, mentally, to be able to get in there and have success. Because I truly believe that if you have confidence in the batter's box or on the mound, in your stuff, you're going to succeed. Right. And so, when you talk about, just understanding the strike zone, and I think you kind of hit on that a little bit, and just the decision making that it takes, you need reps. You need tons of reps. But Walter, you and I talked a lot about this, that the reps that you need might not always be at the place that you're at. And that is a really hard concept for a young player, for families to understand, because again, I pride myself on recruiting for the University of Hawaii and bringing a kid to Hawaii and, man, hoping that he's going to stay there, wanting him to stay there for 4 years and get a degree. But, on the flip side, if he's not going to get all of the reps early on, he might need to go find other opportunities. It doesn't mean I don't want to go bring that guy back or vice versa, but the best opportunity might be at a junior college, or it might be somewhere for the first 12 months where he can get those reps to develop the skill set to be able to say yes or no on a certain pitch, or be able to master a second or third pitch on the mound, so that he can have the success that he wants, right? And I do believe it's not where you start, it's where you finish. And man, if we had a perfect world, if they could all start at UH and get a degree and finish there and either get drafted or go off into the professional world, man, we've done our job great. But that's not the landscape that we're living in anymore. And so I think that the resolve and the toughness and this taking it day by day, step by step, being able to listen to people like you and say, hey, listen, it's not the end of the world, right? Here's a skill set and here's some tools that are going to allow you to be better going into this. Things like working out early on, and not just working out, but being specific in your workouts. I mean, you mentioned some really great trainers, Cressy, and some of the people that you deal with on a daily basis. Those guys are teaching young athletes how to move and be physical, for baseball players, not just for in the weight room, right? And I think that's really important as well.
One of the things when I hear you talk, and particularly when we've talked recently, there's a recalibration. That's my words. That's going on with college baseball, but I don't think it has made its way into the youth and the high school level. Because when I hear you talk, and I so many parents hear someone say size, strength, nutrition, but it kind of washes over them as if, oh yeah, I'll do that when I'm a senior.
Yeah.
But when you start to talk about that dynamic along with your reps, and I'm always trying to get parents to understand, it's great that you want your student athlete at 15U to play 15U, but inevitably they got to play against the 18 and 19-year-olds, because the 18 and 19-year-old version of that athlete is playing against 23 and 24-year-olds. Yeah. So at some point, we collectively, as a group, as a baseball world, have to begin to let parents and athletes know, hey, it's time to be competitive against the older, stronger, faster, better athletes, at least at 16.
Yeah.
When you're that sophomore in high school. Because if you want to obviously play beyond college, you're going to have to get those reps against the bigger, stronger, more skilled athletes. How do you convey that? Sure. Whether it's an incoming student athlete, do you try to encourage them, go play college summer league, go play older level? How do you get your athletes to try to prepare when they're coming in, whether they're committed as juniors or seniors?
It's a great balance, because I think you're balancing two things. You're balancing what you're talking about, which is the competition piece, and you want them to face the best. And I mean, Coach Hill is huge on that, and I am as well, at getting our players off into some of the better leagues in the country at an early age, right? As freshmen, West Coast League, Northwoods League, if they've got the stats and the numbers and the acumen to be able to get them to the Cape Cod League and on the East Coast. And so, that's a huge piece of it, but you also have to balance the confidence piece. And that's the part where, as a young athlete, when you're 16, 17 years old, I think, when you're even younger than that, 13, 14, 15, you're probably used to being the guy, and you're probably used to getting after it and people saying, hey, that's the best player. And then there's this trend that's going where if you're not the best player, will you go find a team where you can be the best player? But then after a while that fades out because you're not winning, but you're the best player. And so now you're mad at the team because the team's not good enough. So you go find another good team, but now you're not the best player anymore. And so I think you're right. At some point, it's probably 16, 17, you start to go, hey, listen, you got to let him be. You got to let him play. He's got to fail. Hopefully he learns how to fail at an early age and bounce back from it. If your first failure is the fall of your freshman year, and that's the first time you fail, that's a big, which it's going to happen, right? Johnny, who came in hitting 500, was an All-American, got drafted, turned down the draft. I don't care how good you are, you're going to fail that first fall. There's going to be some struggle. And it's, can you bounce back fast enough? Can we arm you with enough reps and enough tools and enough approach and enough mental work to where you bounce back fast and now you're off and running? And that's kind of what we pride ourselves in, is being able to, help out on both sides. So putting them in the right situations, when you're talking about a freshman that's coming in or a sophomore, maybe, and we're trying to place them, but we're also have to look at it. It's not just reps. It's at some point you got to build them back up. If they've had a lot of failure, you've got to be able to build them back up. And so sometimes it's, hey, we're going to put you in this league with this team because we know you're going to get 200 at bats and you need that. I don't care what it looks like. I don't care who it's against. You got to go hit. Great. But then there's also that one where it's like, okay, you did that and you had a good sophomore year. Now we're going to go challenge you. Now you got to go to Northwoods League and play 70 games in 60 days. And now let's see what you're made of, because you're probably not going to start every day. You're going to have to earn everything you get. And so that's, I think when you start to get out of the, hey, we're promising you time, or you're going to a place where you're guaranteed to be the guy and you have to actually earn it. I think there's something to that. There's always been something to that. I mean, that's how greatness, comes from those players, from those young men.
One of the things I feel very strongly about is not only are you a good talent evaluator, but you're a good teacher of the game, and that's important. I think that gets lost. I think a lot of us sometimes we hear all this new technology and we want all the gadgets and the gurus, but you're a student of the game. You know the game. You know how to teach and instruct. If you could talk to those athletes or parents that might be watching or listening,
Mm-hmm.
and they're 8th, 9th, 10th grade, they're not part of the recruiting buzz anymore, the new rules. What would you say to them that they should be taking pride in each and every day, not just during baseball season, but each and every day? What should they be doing on a daily or weekly basis in order to prepare for what awaits them, regardless of the level of the division at the collegiate level?
Yeah, I'd say there's a few things. One, they need to start getting into the habit of having great habits. And it could be super small things like, we do this thing called build on, work on, right? So build on something that you're doing really well, work on something that you need improvement on. So you could do this after a hitting lesson. You could do it after a pitching lesson. So you write 2 columns on a piece of paper, BO and WO. So it forces you to have to say, all right, what are 3 things that I did really well? Well, I'm, my stance is really good. I feel super balanced, and I'm creating a really good whip, really good bat speed. Okay, great. Build on, work on. I need to get better with my load and stride. My timing's off. It's late. I need to, I need to get my posture a little better. I feel like when I take swings, I pop up in my stance. I need to stay over the baseball a little bit longer. Things like that, to where you can sit there and really break that down. Plus, it's just the skill of having somebody write something down. And nowadays, most young people are not going to sit on the piece of paper and write, but everybody has one of these phones. And so you can sit there and go on your notepad and create, what we call a hitting journal or something, a performance journal yourself, just on your notepad. Just write a couple of little notes. I would say the habit of doing that at an early age will start to carry over to when you get to college, because a lot of the higher achievers, the Chris Bryants that you're talking about, some of these guys that do it at such a really high level, even at the college, we've got one now, Elijah Iquez, who's a tremendous shortstop, and he'll hear his name down the road in June and July, no doubt about that. But that guy writes things down. That guy is sitting there just writing little notes after each series. What did they do to him? How did they attack him? How can he get a little better? Needs to get better. He's writing things like, I need to get better at my drag bunch, just so that's a weapon for me. I think that's a big piece. When I think of 7th, 8th, 9th grade, I think of the nutrition piece right away. It's one of the first things I think about. I tell a lot of the younger guys that I've worked with over the last couple of years, I'm always telling their parents, like, really focus on calories in and calories out, right? And I mean that in the sense of, they don't have to eat perfect. You're not trying to, it's perfect food. It's all chicken. It's all salad. It's all this. It's just make sure that you've got enough good stuff going in your body 3 to 4 times a day. If you can eliminate those long gaps where you're not having any food. I mean, middle schoolers are notorious for not eating for 7-8 hours. Hey, I ate a good lunch. I ate a Chick-fil-A for lunch, and then I don't eat anything till 8 o'clock after my last lesson, after practice, after weights. I think that's the stuff that we need to start kind of dialing in a little bit before we get to college is, okay, what are the in-betweens look like? What's in between breakfast and lunch? Can I get a protein shake in there? What's in between lunch and dinner? Can I get, 2 peanut butter and jelly sandwiches in there? Just something in the body that's keeping them running and fueling, because it doesn't matter how much you go into the weight room and how much time you're putting in. If you're 170 and you're 6'2" and you're throwing 87 and your goal is to be a 90 mile an hour plus pitcher who's got some size, it's not going to happen by not eating. And so I think that's, so everything that's like an action, like, nutrition or writing things down, the mental game, it's also just the act of doing it every single day because you're developing habits. I mean, the biggest thing that we require of those freshmen is time and time management, getting up on time, being at meetings on time, showing up to their classes on time, right? Ahead of time, preparing, bringing notepads and pieces of paper and pencils to meetings and writing notes. And we require our guys to do that because we want them to succeed beyond, college. We want that. So I think those are like probably the three things: being able to write things down, the nutrition piece. And then if they're seventh, eighth grade and their parents aren't comfortable with them yet getting into the weight room because they haven't fully developed, totally understand that. I think there's some great body weight stuff that they can be doing.
Correct.
Just things, the squats and the lunges and the burpees and the jumping jacks and the push-ups and those type of things, to where 3 to 4 times a week plus running, that's huge. On the baseball side, I don't think the game gets taught enough in the sense of what the game is, the cuts and relays, the base running, we just don't get that as much as we used to. We really don't. We get a lot of lessons. There's a lot of hitting. There's a lot of pitching. There's a lot of defensive lessons, but just the ability to get out onto a field. So I would really encourage people, when they're thinking about, hey, what team am I going to play for? Really look at the coaches, right? And sometimes you get caught up in hey, all these good players are going to that team to play. Well, that's going to be a good team because you're going to win and you'll be around other good players. But if you're not getting taught the game at those crucial ages, those 14, 15, 16, if you can't properly execute a sack bunt, if you don't know what a slash is, if you don't know what a delay steal is, how to take a proper lead from first base and get a good secondary lead, how to score from second to home and cut the distance down, on your turn at third base, just the little tiny things that when we go out and recruit as coaches, and I'm looking for those little things that go, okay, he already does that. Wow, he already does that. Okay, he already does that. Oh, and by the way, he's got a really good arm. He runs, he can hit. He's got a good head on his shoulders. He looks like he has poise. He doesn't freak out. Oh man, now all of a sudden, you're starting to paint a really good picture of a young man that could come play college baseball for us. So it's not just the throw hard, hit the ball far, run fast, man. That's what really gets you going. That's why you're there watching that kid, but what keeps you interested? And if a kid has a little bit more knowledge, shows that in the ability to go out and do those little things in front of a college recruiter, it's not just making the great play. It's all those other little details that I think get us excited. And it makes it a lot easier to go back to Coach Hill and say, hey, this young man is doing 17 things the right way. I think he's our kind of guy. I think this is a guy that can come here and compete right away. And then knowing that he's going to have some failure once he gets here, and we're okay with that. We want him to grow. You got to go through some stuff to get to the other side, and we understand that. But it sure is nice when they have a little bit more of the pieces to the puzzle already completed.
Well, I got to tell you, the build on, work on, just that 1 4-minute I mean, that is solid information. But I'm going to squeeze one more in because you just nailed it. I never get a lot of coaches go down this path, and you absolutely drilled this. A lot of times athletes will ask, what do I need to work on? And when you say to them, well, it's, it could be base running technique. It could be, double cut situation. It could be game situational base running, secondary leads when you're down by a run, the outfield positioning. Know if you're a base runner, know where your outfielders are and kind of get instinctual jump. How much of that? Now, I always hear parents say, well, the coaches don't practice it, so how can my son? I always say to the parents, your student athletes can watch more baseball.
Yeah.
They can go see more baseball. They can kind of begin to do things in their mind and create situations. Talk a little bit about how you can approach that, particularly for high school students, watching more games, what to pay attention to, sequences on the mound, what pitchers are trying to do. How do you try to instill that in younger players so that they kind of know how to work on that before they get to the University of Hawaii?
Yeah. When I'm working with like younger players, I think that's a challenge, right? You're always trying to, what's your favorite player? Hey, it's Mike Trout. Okay, great. I want you to go watch Mike Trout. I want you to go find some highlight videos and watch what he does. Watch him move around in the outfield. Watch the jumps that he gets. Watch how he stays inside pitches and drives the ball the other way. I mean, that's like base level. YouTube's our friend. Let's go watch that, right? But you've hit it on the head. And I've heard you say this in former podcasts that you've had, is like, go watch college baseball. I think it's such a value and such a tool. I mean, you brought up Coach Kuhn at Charleston Southern. If you're in the Charleston area and you get a chance to go watch one of his games, the way that he orchestrates the defense, the way that those players are moving on every pitch on cue based off of what the last pitch did, tremendous, right. Tremendous. I mean, it's high level, and it takes guys a while to get used to that. But man, once they do, it's like watching a chess piece, a chessboard move on its own. You know, right fielder shifts, center fielder goes over, shortstop moves one to his left. I mean, it's really cool to watch. And Lindsey Meggs was a lot like that too at the University of Washington. I mean, that was a very well-oiled machine in terms of moving players based on pitches, based on counts. And I think, you know, to answer your question specifically, I think if you go and you watch your position, right? If I'm a first baseman Bingo. And I go, hey, I'm going to go watch that first baseman for 3 to 4 innings. Maybe I can get 7 to 9 innings out of a young guy and keep that attention span. You know, I think if you were to ask me at 16, I'd be like, heck yeah. I used to go to Stanford games. I'd watch the Texas Stanford series and the Augie Garrido bring his Fullerton team up to play against Stanford and Coach Marquez. And man, those were battles, and you were enthralled, like, oh my God, look what that guy did. Look at the drag bunt. Look at the way they move. But I think you have to have a passion for that. And sometimes I think young people's minds are, you know, they don't want to stay focused on that. They just want to do the things that are fun. And if you truly are a student of the game and you love baseball and you love the ability to get better, I think that is a great start. Because I could say, hey, watch Major League games. Those are fun, and they're great. I mean, we do a lot of our work off of video from Major League players. Like we're working with catchers and being able to watch, you know, those high level guys do their thing. It's a lot easy to talk to a college player about that because they're interested in it. When I show them video of pro players, they're locked in, right? And we're in the video room and we're breaking it out. They are locked in on that stuff. It's sometimes harder to get a 12, 13, 14-year-old to go, because they still don't quite know their own body yet. They still don't quite know their own moves, to where it's hard sometimes. Hey, I want you to do this. Be like that guy. That's hard, right? But I also do think that you can, you know, as a coach, even as a high school coach, you can break certain things up. Like, and Coach Hill does such a great job of this, is where we'll find 5 or 6 plays and we'll put those up. Hey, there's a great cut and relay. We're going to show that. Hey, there was a botched bunt play. Let's show that and talk about why that happened so that we're learning. It might not have been our guys that did it. It was, hey, that happened at the highest level. Let's watch that. You know, things from other colleges, you know, stuff in the College World Series, things like that, you know, to be able to show different plays and help build off of that and help work off of that. So
one of the things I want to just bring to your attention, if you're listening, go back and listen. When Coach Twohig just said the word passion, that's a big deal when it comes to college athletics, because without passion, you cannot participate at the highest level. You must love the grit and the love and the passion for the sport. And the only way to get better is to have that passion. And one of the things I want parents to understand, kind of backing up what Coach Twohig just said, I had a high school coach, and every single time a ball was put in play, he used to call it perfect play. And for him, he would scream. He had a whistle around his neck, and he would scream, you're either going to the ball, you're either going to a bag, or you're going to back up. There's no other thing that you can be doing. I don't want to hear any other thing other than ball, bag, or backing up. Yeah. If I ask, what are you doing on that play? There's one of 3 answers you got to give me. Don't tell me you're a spectator. And so these are the types of, I think, information and insights that college coaches really take the time to share. And I think more and more parents need to understand it's more than analytics. It's more than metrics. It's obviously more than statistics. And Jordan, I can't thank you enough, man. I think you're a rock star. I think you have a way of conveying, you know, what needs to be said to athletes, both current at the collegiate level, but more importantly at the developmental levels, you know, that 8th through 12th grade. And I really am super appreciative that you took the time to share with us today some of those insights.
Coach, you hit something on the head. Before we wrap up, I want to expand a little bit, because you did say that passion for the game, no doubt about it. I love baseball so much, and I've had a passion since I was a little kid, and I still love it. I've got such a tremendous passion for coaching, and teaching. But I would say this, and I tell every recruit that I talk with about this, it's almost one of the last things that I talk to them about. I say, hey, you can't just like baseball, right? You have to have a
Right.
passion, not just for baseball, but you have to have a passion for the lifestyle of what it means to be a college player. And that is hard to know. And so we try to do a very good job at describing what that is. And every coach that's listening has done this. You wake up at 6 a.m., you go to weights, you go back and have breakfast, you go to your first class, you go to your second class, then you have a break, then you go to your third class, you go to the field early, you get your lunch, you get your early work in, you go through your whole practice, you go get your homework done, you come back to the field, get some swings in later, go get another meal, and then do it all over again. And then sometimes you got to do that while you're hurt. Sometimes you got to do that when your girlfriend is broken up with you. Sometimes you got to do that when you're homesick. You got to do all of those things every day, and you've got to love that. You've got to love all of those routines and have a tremendous passion for the lifestyle of what it means. Like when you watch it on TV and you get to see the LSU Coastal Carolina and all the pageantry and how magical that series was last year, and for Coach Johnson and his staff to win it again, it's tremendous, right? But there's a lot that goes into that. There's a lot of moving parts to get to that place right there. And we're all striving for that. And so when you're breaking it down to recruiting and you're trying to find the right people and the right players, that's a huge piece of it, is how can you show a college coach time in, time out, that type of passion? And how can you do it when a coach only comes to watch you once or twice? And trust me, it's recruiting's tough. It's a hard deal for parents and kids. And so to be able to have people like you who give insight when, University of Hawaii might fly in once to see that kid once and have to make a decision based off of 3 hours of work. So what can you do? Can you exude it? Are you bouncing off the walls? Are you smiling? Are you enjoying yourself? Are you playing to your best? Notice how I didn't say any hits. Notice how I didn't say any strikeouts, but it's the effort, the energy. I know what you look like. I know what your tool set is. I know what your skill set is. And can you perform? And if you can perform a little bit based off all that, and I can talk to guys like you, I can talk to high school coaches, I can get a good picture, a local scout, a high school counselor, I can find out who is this young man outside of all of this. Man, it sure makes my job a lot easier when I don't have those things stacked up against. When I come out to a game and the kid's flat, or he acts like he doesn't want to be there, and he's big leaguing some people, his attitude's not the right way, but man, he just hit a 500-foot home run, and so now I'm at a loss because, man, I sure want that power. I just don't know if I want that kid. Amen. And that's a long flight back for me, where I'm gonna have to sleep on that and decide, hey, is that our kind of guy? Can I overlook that? Can we offset that with a good culture? Can we offset that with mental training? Or is it not where we want to go? And maybe we'll take a little less talent, but we're going to take the right kid. That's the balance that we're constantly living in. So my advice is, man, if any way you can show that coach that you have a tremendous passion for what it means to be a college player, wear coaches down, right? Sometimes we've had some of our best players that have absolutely knocked down the door and wore us down and said, hey, I'm going to be a Bo Warrior. I'm going to be there. And we're like, we're full. I don't know. And nope, I'm going to be there. And those kids just keep grinding and grinding. And some of it doesn't work out and some of it does. And so I would say that for the ones that really want to play, have passion in everything you do, set up really good values, set up some great habits, make sure that you're working and training tremendously, make sure you're trying to get bigger so you cut the gap down between all of the older kids that are in the game. And man, be willing to work while you wait, because there might be a little waiting that's involved, but work your tail off and eventually it'll catch up.
Well, if I am a parent or a student athlete, I'm doing two things. One, I'm following Coach Twohig on social media. I'm going to have all that in the description, but I'm getting a transcript of this whole thing. I'm reading it. I'm listening to it. I'm watching it. That's full of information. The two biggest takeaways as you're ending this episode is build on and work on. Man, oh man, get a journal out and just write those words on about 50 pages and just every day, build on, work on. And sooner or later, hopefully you're building on more things than you're working on, but that's part of the progression of the sport of baseball. But Jordan, thank you so very, very
Thanks,
much.
Coach.
Best of luck going forward in 2026. please give my best to Coach Hill and the
I
rest
will.
of the staff, especially
will.
Keith, and look forward to seeing you at some point. I'd love to say I'm coming to Hawaii. I don't know
Yeah,
if
we gotta make that happen, Coach. But we'll talk again soon. Okay.
Looking
Appreciate the
forward to
time.
that. Thank
Thanks
you,
again.
guys.
Athletes, electrolytes matter, but you got to choose the right electrolytes. If you look at the sugars, 34 grams, the dyes, all the things that's not good for you in this product, this is a hype product. If you look here at the electrolytes made by Core V, that's got the right amount of magnesium, sodium, potassium, zinc, kosher salt. It's got vitamin C to help with the immune system. I'm telling you, if you want to stay on the field, you want to perform at your best, you want to recover well, this is the product that you need to choose to fuel your